the F4U Corsair. Odd looking fella, isn't he? Join me as I build Academy's sufficient rendition of the other really iconic naval fighter. You'll never believe where the build started. I'll give you 10 seconds to guess. It was the cockpit. Did you get it right? If so, leave a comment down below and I'll promptly ignore you and go about my day. It was pretty simple, just painting the things, dry brushing the things, and then giving all the things and whatnot a bit of panel line wash. Honestly, it's been about 3 build videos and I'm already running out of ways to describe the Spanish School of Scale modelling. As far as cockpits go, this one's acceptable. It's not accurate down to the individual knob, but it's an effective enough representation, albeit with not much provision for the little red bits and bobs that seem to be prevalent on the real thing. After putting the main cockpit parts together, sandwiching it all between the fuselage halves is a bit of an ordeal. There's a few nondescript raised notches on the fuselage halves that correspond with some sorry excuses for tabs on the cockpit tub. It all feels a bit vague to put together, although fortunately there is access to finagle things into place before you put the wings on. I moved on to the double wasp engine next. Pretty much just base coated with gunmetal, dry brushed it with silver, and then picked out the blue bit with blue. While you probably could go the extra mile and do some extra wiring and whatnot to make it super detailed and epic, I'm very tired. Anyways, general construction. Eagle-eye viewers may have spotted this in my F14 build video, but I have in fact invested in my tools for the first time in ages. I got the cheapest pair of single-bladed snips that I could find on AliExpress, and oh man, they're good. They leave a nice clean cut, and if you're wicked skilled, you can make the nub mark almost imperceptibly flush, which is always nice. These unfortunately could not fix how this kit's designed. The wing halves fit together alright, but again, no real locating features of any kind, just an indistinct butt joint that you can't let go of for even a moment before the glue sets, lest everything gets misaligned by a millimeter and you commit seppuku out of sheer embarrassment. Now, when I glued the fuselage halves, I made what I thought was a mistake in not cementing the front cowling, but as it turns out, this is the ideal way to build it. You see, if you glue the fuselage halves together all the way as your monkey brain has been trained to do many times before, the shape of the main body is completely incongruent with what's on the wings, so you have to do a lot of faffing about to get the shape proper. And after you've got all that squared away, you still have to contend with a gigantic combination step and gap where the wings meet the fuselage. At least there isn't much of a wing root gap? Yay, I guess? But after fitting the engine and horizontal stabilizers, it at least starts to look like a Corsair. The landing gears went on fine too, nothing of note to really mention there. After filling in some gaps and doing a bit of sanding, I could then do a bit of priming. I decided to go back to Vallejo's surface prime for this build because I couldn't be fucked doing any masking. I've noticed that there's not much online on how to brush this stuff on, but it's as easy as apply coat, let it dry for a bit, apply other coat, done. It's really thin from the bottle, so anything further just makes it beat up. While it does nicely shrink to the model surface detail, as with any other paint, please don't just slop it on. You gotta use a sparing amount. After that, I could begin the long and arduous process of painting. As usual, the white was just a really light grey, but you didn't hear that from me. This took about 5 layers, but so did the other 2 colours for some reason this time around. Just for reference, 2 coats of primer, 5 coats of white, 5 coats of light blue, and actually like 6 or 7 of the dark blue. Multiply that by a roughly 15-minute drying time means a total of 4.5 hours waiting for paint to dry. Isn't that neat? In terms of the blues that I used, I just used whatever Vallejo says is a match for the federal standard colours of the real thing. While it looked pretty goofy to begin with, once all the colours are down and at full coverage, it actually looks reasonably accurate, so there's a life pro tip for you. I also got a bit experimental and tried creating a softer edge between colours via a technique I stole from YouTube channel and fellow brush painter, The Brush Painter. Basically, taking a stub of an old brush, stipple on the lighter of the 2 colours as close to the edge of the demarcation line as you possibly can get. Any further and it starts looking a bit crap. Honestly, not too sure how I feel about this technique. It's my first time, so it looks a tad arse, but nothing a bit of experience can't solve, I suppose. But then again, at the same time, I'm usually of the mind that at 1/72nd scale, any sort of soft edge between colours is basically negligible. Either way, fuck it, she'll be right. After a bit of gloss, I could move on to the decals. Contrary to what everyone on the internet says, they're actually not too bad. Generally printed well enough, but a few of them look a tad dollopy, and they're actually on the thinner side of things compared to, say, Hasegawa's decals. Anyways, this kit gives you two markings options. The first is quote-unquote Big Hog, a Corsair flown by Tom Blackburn during World War II. Tom wrote a book titled The Jolly Rogers back in 1989, which I fortunately was able to read in time for this video. It's a very, very, very good book, hence why this is the scheme I went with. Well, that, and I just think the phrase Big Hog is really funny. There's also a Marine Corps plane, F-107, flown by Philip DeLong, also during World War II if you can believe it. It's an overall sea blue though, so good luck trying to make it look interesting. On the whole, there really aren't that many decals, and there's nothing too difficult if you're worried about that sort of thing. After the decals were done in another coat of gloss, I could now proceed to do my patented world-famous doing of the random bullshit with oil paints. Appreciated effect was done using a flat brush to blend oil paints along panel lines. Some colour modulation was attempted via the stippling and blending of little dots of lighter coloured oils around the centre of panels. At this stage you can barely see any of it because of how dark the base colours are and because of how glossy the surface is, but after the model got its final matte finish, it sure looks. After this I could do some more things. A bit of chipping here, some exhaust streaks there, and it's looking a bit more used. Finally, on to the home stretch. This is what I'd usually call the boring stuff, but having read the book, some of the stuff isn't quite so boring. This propeller may look like a normal run-of-the-mill propeller, but if you look really, really closely, you'll notice that the hub as well as the first few centimeters of the propeller blades are painted red. This is a subtle reference to the fact that this is how they were in real life. You'll also notice that I went for the general purpose bomb. I was pretty much going to retell the entire 32nd chapter of Blackburn's book, but really, if you know, you know. After putting the canopy on, I could finally call my build of Academy's Corsair done. This is definitely one of the kits I've ever made. It seems to be a pretty decent representation of a Corsair, surface detail's alright and the decals are fine. Sure, the fit's pretty janky in some areas, but it's not even the top 10 worst I've ever dealt with. It's a decent kit. Acceptable, even. I paid around $30 for it, although it was at a museum gift shop. A really good museum, mind you, but it does tend to go for around $20 elsewhere, and for that price, yeah. As far as other options go, there's Hobby Boss's Easy Assembly, which is wicked cheap but probably not all that great. There's Revell's offering. Italiari's got one, but a 1994 tooling by them is basically a 70s tooling by just about every other manufacturer's standards. And lastly, Tamiya. Tamiya good. Buy Tamiya kit.